Aloha. Welcome to Ably Seminar Sessions. Today, we're going to talk about the listing contract. Because if a seller wants to sell a house, they will usually hire a realtor to help represent them in listing the home, selling the home, and doing the negotiations, doing open houses, and doing all the necessary paperwork required to make the transaction successful. So now we have the seller, who is what we call the principal or the employer. And we have the listing broker, which would be the principal broker or the broker in charge. As we mentioned before, the sub-agent, the brand new agent that just got their license, they're not an agent, but they're a sub-agent to the principal broker or BIC, even though his client might be the one that brought the client to the table. So the listing agency agreement is between the seller and the PB or the BIC. Salesperson acts as a sub-agent to the PB and the BIC and helps his client, so to speak, to do the transaction. So what's involved? The owner agrees to pay a commission for doing the transaction, finding a ready, willing, and able buyer to buy on the terms and conditions that the seller is willing to sell at. And sometimes they'll use an outside broker to represent the buyer, because the buyers and the seller's agents are usually working together to try and make the transaction work. The contract is a 5-page contract called the Listing Exclusive Right to Sell Listing Contract. And in that contract, we'll have the terms and conditions that the seller is willing to sell at. And the listing price will be there. How long is a listing contract for? And typically we see 6 months to a year as a listing period. They also have what we call how much do we pay to the outside broker for their work. And then also there's a protection period, which we'll talk about in the class, but not today. It's a little complicated. All right. So now you sign the listing contract, and you also have what's called Exhibit A, which is going to the information in the multiple listing service. Example would be in Exhibit A, how big is a lot? What's a house size? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? And is there a view? What's the condition like? And there's tons of information that we need to know about the property to put into a multiple listing service as part of the listing. So the agent will then have the right to get all that information from the seller or sellers and then have them sign the contract as for the listing contract, but the sub-agent does not sign the contract. The PB or the BIC will sign it, not the sub-agent. So now once all the paperwork is done, then the agent or the sub-agent will then usually hire a professional photographer or videographer in the case of bigger properties, and they'll take pictures and then post the pictures up to, at least in Honolulu, up to 25 pictures that can go into the multiple listing service. So now the listing is ready, it's signed, it's inputted into the multiple listing service, and it becomes what they call active. When the listing is active, then the property is now available for sale and for showing to the public. Sometimes the sellers might want a for sale sign in front of their home. Others will say, I don't want any signs out there. And they might say, I want open houses on Sundays, have brokers opens for the brokers on a Wednesday or Thursday in Hawaii, and they can show the house pretty much to anybody that wants to see the home. So the public open houses are usually on Sunday, sometimes on Saturday. The brokers open to the brokers are usually on a Wednesday or Thursday. So now let's say you have the open house and someone makes an offer. Now the question is, what's the seller going to do with that offer? They can either accept the offer the way it is, or they can counter the offer and change the price, the terms, the closing date, and anything else that they want changed in this 14-page purchase contract that they're going to be offering to the seller. Or they might do a counter offer and say, no, I want to change the terms, and I don't want this price. I want it higher. They also have a choice of basically rejecting the offer and saying, nope, not even going to consider it. And that happens typically if the buyer made what they call a really low offer and the seller's offended. But the buyers are playing a game. So you could say, I'm rejecting it or I'm countering it. Either way. And of course, if the offer is good enough, then you accept it. Then it goes into escrow. And we'll talk about the escrow process in a later chapter. So this contract is called a bilateral contract, where the seller and the seller's broker sign an agreement, and both are legally bound within the terms of the contract to do specific things. Example would be, the seller agrees to allow the house to be shown at reasonable hours. Seller agrees to keep the place clean to be able to show to the public. The agent agrees to do his best effort in showing the property and marketing the property, and to answer any questions, to negotiate any of the conditions, etc. So it's a process that takes a while. Now, in the market, when it was really hot a few years ago, offers were coming in 5 to 10 offers above list price. Today, because the interest rates are so high, that's not the case. And we might be lucky if we have 1 or 2 offers or 3. But we're still seeing well-priced properties in good locations, in good condition. They're still commanding a list price or higher. And sometimes we see it even 50 or 100,000 above list price because of the low supply. High demand, low supply, high price. And that's what happens with a listing contract. It's a bilateral contract between the seller and the seller's broker, the PB or BIC. The subagent will then help the seller in the transaction. So let's say the subagent says, I'm not happy with this company. I'm going to leave. And the subagent tells the broker, I'm leaving, and I want to take my listing with me. Remember who the listing is with. The broker signed the contract, not the subagent. So in those instances, what we recommend is go to the broker as a subagent and say, hey, I'm planning to leave, and I would really appreciate it if you release that listing so I can take it with me. And the broker says, yeah, sure. Or the broker says, no, it's my listing. And the subagent will go, that's my mother. But remember, the agency relationship is with the seller and the PB or BIC, not the subagent, the son or the daughter. All right? So we need to be very careful about how we approach when you leave, that you want to take your listing with you, but do it in a nice way and don't burn bridges. Okay? And sometimes people get a little heated about leaving a company. So hope you learned something about the agency between the seller and the broker and the relationship of the new agent called the subagent in a listing agency contract. Aloha.